second chance in the game.
You know, so many coaches in all sports at all levels fall into that trap that society kind of throws at us of how they view success. So I appreciate you being here. Appreciate you taking the time to view this video and just being a part of ChiefPigskin.com. First thing I do often when I present this, it's in front of a live crowd, and I put this screen up there. There's no better coach out there than me. And I just let it sit there for a second. And you could see some people wanting to get up and leave. Some people want to throw things at me. The question I have for them is, how does that make you feel? To have a coach stand before you and say, there's not a better coach out there than me. Because if I heard that from someone, I'd probably tune out right away. Just tune them out. The problem is, once again, society defines success with our win-loss column. And I'm still guilty of it to this day. So often I will, when someone says, hey, how was your season? My mind right away goes to our record. And if that's how we define success, if we define success with what our win-loss record was, it's going to be a tough go. And I think that's why there's so much turnover in coaching, whether it's the coach's decision or the school's decision, because success is all too often defined in that win-loss column. I want to let you know how I define success. The number one goal I have as a coach is to empower others. Hands down, number one goal is to empower others. Had a great conversation with a fellow coach from a different program this summer, and he said it perfectly. I hadn't heard this way. He's coached high school, he's coached in college, he's coached over in Europe, and he found himself chasing logos. I was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, I thought every logo I went to, a different higher program in high school, a different division, went to a junior college, then to a successful program in Europe, the logo would make him happy. And he realized coaching is coaching no matter where you are. And if you're always chasing logos, you're going to find yourself really unfulfilled. And I loved how he said that. My why is to empower other people. And if that's true, I can empower other people at a small little high school in Podunk, New Hampshire, or a big high school here in California. It doesn't matter. In other words, I know my why. The greatest success I had this year really came down to, you know, we had a successful season in the win-loss column. We were made it to the second round of the playoffs. But my greatest success this year, when I think about it, was a text that came from a player at the end of the season. See, just before the season, I had a young man reach out to me I'd never heard of before, or heard from, and a sophomore here at Coronado High School who had never played football. He has a scholarship already, and this isn't one of those fictitious scholarships. He really has one to the University of Arizona for baseball. His father played baseball there, and his father played football there. And he reached out to me and said, this is a little bit about my history. My father played baseball and football in college, played for the Padres for a few years. A few months ago, was diagnosed with a brain tumor and just passed away. My mind was blown. I was like, how do you even respond to that? So I asked to sit down with he and his mother before even having him on the team. Sat down for about an hour or so and really had a heart-to-heart conversation. Fast forward, we had a great year with him. He started both sides of the ball. Good athlete, much better young man, but still a great athlete. At the end of the season, I was driving home after our final game, getting knocked out in the second round of the playoffs, and he texted me and he said, Coach, I got something weird to say. And that was it, that was the text. And I was like, where is this going? And I saw the ellipses on the phone. I'm like, what's coming next? And then he said, it feels good to cry about something other than family. And I teared up reading it, because for me, that's what it's all about. This season for him was, I hesitate to use the word distraction, but it was an opportunity for him to pour his energy and his mind and his focus into something else. I'm not going to replace his father. I don't want to replace his father. I can't replace his father. But for him, it was something else to connect with. And our relationship, he and I, is something that I know will last a lifetime. That's my why. That's my greatest success. Now, what happens often when I'm talking in front of a live audience is I'll ask the people that are sitting in front of me to turn to someone left or right, and a lot of guys don't like this. We have no problem as coaches telling players what to do, but then when we're put in that situation, it's a little uncomfortable. But I ask them to turn to someone and tell them why they coach. And they talk for a few minutes. And then the question I have is, I ask the person that heard that, did you believe them? And it's interesting to see the responses. Some guys start laughing. Some guys kind of look at me and like, no, I didn't. And the thing that really comes to mind for me is how many of us have coached with or coach against or know people in our coaching circles that claim to care about the young men, claim to talk about, the things that really matter, but when the proverbial crap hits the fan, show a completely different side of themselves. Because I think the world is littered with people that say the right things, but live a life that's completely different when they're pushed. Slowing down here for a second so I can check my notes. The problem is everyone says the right thing. I think each of us have the interview questions. I don't think there's a coach in the nation, and I don't care what level it's at, whether it's elementary school, high school, college, in the NFL, that's not going to interview with their game face on. They're going to show up prepared for that interview. Most people. They're going to show up with the right politically correct answers. It's about character, it's about fundamentals, it's about raising better young men, it's about balance, it's about all these things that sound right. Everyone has the interview questions. But once again, when that crap hits the fan, the true colors show. When there's a saying that says your actions speak so loudly I can barely hear what you're saying. And I love that quote. I'm going to say it again. Your actions speak so loudly, I can barely hear what you're saying. The problem is people don't believe what we say, they believe what we do. I shouldn't say that's a problem. The reality is people don't believe what we say, they believe what we do. And there's a lot of power in that. As players, as coaches, as husbands, our words mean very little if they don't match our actions. My why. My first coaching opportunity started back my senior year in college. I had a professor, I went to Plymouth State College back in New Hampshire, and a professor approached myself and a teammate and said, hey, there's a local elementary school or middle school looking for coaches to coach their flag football team. So I looked at my buddy and I was like, yeah, we'll do it. And she said, well, there's one thing. She said it's a special needs team. And I have a passion for working with children with special needs. So I said, even more so, absolutely, I'll do that. My first experience ever thinking I wanted to coach beyond that little introduction was when a young girl on the team, 6th or 7th grade, a young woman with Down syndrome, caught a football, and she caught the ball. It was probably a 5-yard underhand toss, and her eyes just lit up. Now, I always knew I wanted to be a school teacher, but never really thought about coaching as much as I loved playing, and I played from 2nd grade through college. But I saw her eyes light up, and for me, it just kind of clicked. Like, I want to have that impact on a grander scale, so to speak. So my first introduction to coaching was coaching a flag football special needs team, and loved everything about it. I can't remember honestly if we won a game or not, but I just remember the feeling of being there with those children, the conversations with the parents, and the feeling I had inside of empowering someone that I wanted to do for a lifetime. I was hooked. So what happened was I taught my first 4 years in a local town, and really just kind of got my feet on the ground with teaching. My 5th year, I reached out to a local high school and reached out to the head coach and just said, hey, this is who I am. I played football for a bunch of years, have 0 coaching experience, but are you looking for any assistance? And it just so happened, it was kind of a God thing for me, where he showed up. He said, yeah, let's meet. He showed up with a manager from their team, and their manager, Matt, was a young man who had Down syndrome. I was like, that's pretty cool. I didn't say anything to him, but I was like, that's cool. We sat down, and it just so happened he had a head coaching position for their freshman team. It was baptism by fire. 2 of those 8 years that I coached there, I had no assistants. Now, we had a lot of fun. As I look back on it now, after coaching for 22 years, those young men paid the price. You know, we made great connections. We had great success in the field, but we needed a lot more coaches. But what that did for me was it allowed me to learn a lot or a little about a lot of positions, about all the positions. So that was my introduction to coaching. At the end of every season, the head coach would say, "Hey, Kirk, come on up to varsity." And I had no desire to even go to varsity. I was like, "No, I'm good. I like what I'm doing here." And then I was approached by the head coach of the town I live in that texted me one day and said, "Hey, we're tired of coaching against you. Come coach with us." Now, my wife and I have 4 children, 3 daughters and a son. And our son was going into 6th or 7th grade at that time. So I saw the opportunity to potentially coach my son, which is not why I got into coaching, but it was an exciting thought. So I went to that high school. After 2 weeks, I went home to my wife and I said, "I'm done. I'm done. I'm going to honor my commitment to finish the year." But that particular coach and I just didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. And it wasn't even so much the X's and O's, but just how things were done with the young men. So I was going through the season there. My wife was a secretary at a brand new high school in Bedford, New Hampshire. And she said, "Hey, listen, the head coaching position's open. The high school has been there for 1 year." She said, "Apply for it." And I said, "Hon, she's my best friend." I said, "I appreciate the support, but I've been a freshman coach for 8 years, a varsity assistant for 1. So I'm good. I'm not qualified to be a varsity head coach. I don't know enough. It's intimidating to me. No." And she said, "Listen, you're miserable where you are. Why not?" And she kind of called my bluff. She's like, "Listen, you're always talking about fighting for what you want and being optimistic and all that." So when she really said it that way, I was like, "All right, I'll apply for it." Went in there and for whatever reason got the job. And it's funny because I remember that the head or the athletic director and the principal of the school had said to me in the second interview, they said, "Coach, if you get this job," it was a very affluent community, a lot of lawyers, doctors, business owners. They said, "If you get this job, how long before you find yourself in the playoffs?" And I don't know why, but without hesitating, I said 3 or 5 years. And they both laughed, like literally laughed in my face. And I got the job, and man, I felt great. Hit the ground running. We had no seniors my first year, but I felt ready. So my first year, attacked it, and we set a record in the state of New Hampshire my first year, getting beat up more than any other school in history. I don't really know if that was a record, but it sure felt like it. I was saying with a friend this morning that at the end of every game, when you walk through and shake hands, what does everyone say? Good game, right? No one even lied to us. Like we were that bad that people just shook our hand. They were like, "This is a beautiful stadium." And I was like, "Man, we're so bad they're not even gonna lie to me." I was like, that's how bad we were. So it was tough. It was tough, and it was tough because I had a coaching staff of young coaches. 2 of them had played together at Division I college, and here I come, this new head coach, with all this energy and this passion, and we lost every game. And part of that, if you go back to my why, which I'm going to continue to touch with, was I said, "Listen, here's our game plan. Here's what we're going to do offensively, defensively, special teams. Here's our workout, plan, if you will." And I said, "Oh, and we're never going to meet on Sundays. Sundays are our family day." And they were like, "Listen, you have to meet on Sundays if you're going to be successful." And I was like, "Well, we're not. We're not going to meet on Sundays." So that felt great to say that to them. And then you look back at the end of the season, we lost every game. We had a coaches meeting, and they said, "All right, we're gonna meet on Sundays now." I'm like, "No, we're not." And when we won 2 games that year, the following year, and then we won 5 games the following year, and they slowly started to buy into what my passion was, what my vision was, what my why was, and that was to empower young men, but at the same time, not to pour into my young men and have that drain and pull from my family. So from there, and I'm going to get back into a little bit of a story from Bedford High School in a moment. My daughter of 4, my oldest of 4, got married. She had, which was fantastic, beautiful wedding. Called me one day after my final year in Bedford, and she said, "Hey, I'm pregnant." And my heart leapt. And about 2 minutes later, it just sank. I was like, oh, because I knew I didn't want to be, my wife and I didn't want to be grandparents on the other side of the country. So that's what led me to move out here to California. I was an assistant coach at Christian High School, very successful private high school. Still to this day, very successful. They were successful before I got there, while I was there, and will continue to be. But just felt the calling on my heart to be a head coach again. So I applied to be a head coach here at Coronado High School, and just wrapped up my 3rd season. So moving on about my why, it's personal. very personal for me. Started with an attachment with a child, that young woman who has special needs. And then what happened after my first year was I had a coaches meeting, because I truly believe that if we want to be successful in any aspect of life, we have to learn from our failures. And that sounds great. It sounds great when you tweet it out, when you say it, but when you're in the middle of that beating, when you're in the middle of just getting your face punched in, it's humbling to say, all right, now let's reflect on how I can get better. So I had a coaches meeting, and after we discussed the X's and O's, after we discussed some changes we want to make with the offense, with the defense, whatever it was, I opened a can of worms, and I knew I was doing this. But I said to my coaches, there were about 14 of us, give or take, and I said, guys, I'm not going to change just for the sake of it, but if there's one thing you'd like to see me do differently as a head coach, what would it be? And I'll never forget this moment. I still get goosebumps when I think of it, because it was silent for about 15 seconds, and then one of the coaches said, I don't think the kids respect you. And I could feel my veins popping and just getting red. I'm like, what do you mean? And he was like, I don't know, Hines, they just don't respect you. I'm like, what are you talking about? And you could see like the collective like breath in the office just got real still, quiet, and a little tense. And he's like, I don't know, like, give me one example. Do they show up late? Do they talk back? Are they disrespectful? Do they leave the locker room, or the weight room, or the field a mess? And he's like, no, it's not that. He goes, they're not afraid of you. And I said, whoa, that's completely different. That's completely different. And he's like, well, I think head coaches should be feared. I'm like, I respect that, but I completely disagree. And still to this day, I completely disagree. So that was a paradigm shift for me. I got in the truck, started to go home at the end of the meeting. I didn't leave early. And one of my assistants called me right away, and he said, Coach, don't ever change. He goes, that's why we're building this program, because kids don't fear you, they respect you. I want to be the type of coach where when I have a young man or a young woman that is suicidal, that is thinking about coming out of the closet, that has parents that are fighting all the time or getting a divorce, whatever life's throwing at them, I want them to know they can come to me. And if they fear me, it might look good to society, yes coach, no coach, and all that stuff, but they're not going to come to me. They're not going to have that person to turn to. So for me, there's a big difference between why. For me, the power of why really comes down to empowering others. And I had a conversation with a player just a few days ago, actually, one of my up-and-coming seniors, and we were just having a great conversation about life. And I said, who are 3 people in your life that really empower you? And he said, my mom, my sister, and a friend of mine. Wasn't what I expected. Just not that I was really expecting a different answer, which kind of surprised me. And I said, great. I said, what is it in them that you feel like they're empowering to you? He said, Coach, they love me and they hold me accountable. And I love that, because for me, empowering is pouring power into others, helping them see their potential and their ability. But he added something that I'll never forget. It's just, you love someone enough to hold them accountable. You love them enough to be honest with them. My first coaches, so that's what happened in Bedford. We ended up having tremendous success. We ended up my last 3 years going to the state championship, or last 4 years, 3 out of the 4 years, each time in a higher division. So we, not I, but we had built a powerhouse. Had 144 players in the program, which for Northern New England was and is a lot. We had built a tremendous program, and then moved out here to California. When I took the Coronado job, I thought, man, California, we must have 150 kids, 160 kids. I didn't know about water polo. I laugh about it now. I've seen water polo, seen it in the Olympics. I just thought it magically happened when people were in the mid-20s, they played water polo. But I came out here to beautiful California, and Coronado of all places, where there were multiple former high school water polo players who have gone on to the Olympics. And I thought, all right, well, what's our football program look like? My first year as head coach here at Coronado. Now, the school's been here for over 101 years. We had 47 young men, 46 and a young woman in our program. And I took the job knowing that 2 of the head coaches that were on the staff had applied for the job. One had been here for about 8 years, one for 18. And a good friend of mine who I coached with at Christian said, hey, be careful, because if those guys stay on, they're going to be bothered. They're going to be upset. And I completely understand that. He said, be careful, watch them carefully, because they might be there saying the right thing to you and undermining you, the parents or the players or whatever. Well, long story short, they stayed on, and they are such salt of the earth men, just such a tremendous blessing to have on staff in every way. But my first meeting here at Coronado, I sat down in this office with them, and we got to know each other a little bit, shared my passion, as I did in Bedford, about what we're going to do offensively, what we're going to do in the weight room. Defensively, I said, I'm open to different things, but here's what I like. And then I asked them, I said, what's a part of you? What's a part of Coronado football that you don't want to let go of? What's a part of Islander Nation that has just got to stay? And similar to the meeting of what I asked back in Bedford, where there was about 15 seconds of silence, here it was about the same thing. And then one of the coaches said, Coach, we need new blood. We need you here. And it was interesting because for such a long history of the school, the previous head coach, great man, but just was not what they felt they needed and what they were really looking for. In their words, after I shared my why, one of the coaches said, Coach, he didn't have a why. Or if he did, he didn't share his why with them, and it wasn't transparent to the players, to the school, and the community. I truly believe that when you have a strong enough why, that you can handle any of the what's, the ifs, anything that life throws at you. And let's be honest, for any of us that have coached long enough, we get a lot of things thrown at us, right? A lot of things are thrown at us. And sometimes they're the good things, the budget, the fundraising. And by good, I mean, we expect that, the injuries and all these different things. And sometimes they're the ugly things. A young man that you pour into and you give everything to and you stay late for, and then the parents are furious with you because they didn't get a certain award, or they think you're playing favorites. And I've talked about this before, and I'm not going to get on a soapbox with this, but all coaches do play favorites. I play favorites. And our favorites usually are the young men that show up, that give their best effort, that are selfless team first players. But all that stuff that's thrown at us, it's part of our job. I've heard it said well before I started coaching, and I hear it all the time, you have to have thick skin. Well, for me, that thick skin is a strong why. Because thick skin might stop you from having all those daggers penetrate you, but a strong why will allow you to use everything that's thrown at you, the good, the bad, and the ugly, to continue to move forward and to pour into the people you love. So that was our first meeting here as a coaching staff, talking about my why, my passion, and understanding that although a lot of the assistants had their own personal reasons for coaching, their whys, they felt that the head coach didn't share it. Not a knock on him, but just a reality of where their program was. So I was excited. So we got started with the off-season training here. We, just like most or all coaches, are excited, to kick off the season, have our first game. And I came once again from where we were in Bedford, having built a powerhouse, 144 players, and we had created my vision, a lot of people's visions. But as the head coach, you own the good and the bad. Went to Christian high school, and it was a powerhouse of a small private Christian school, but man, they had a lot going right there, still do. Came here, and I'm like, all right, this is going to be Bedford 2.0, just the East Coast to West Coast. First game, we started getting beat pretty bad, and as the game's going on, it was surreal because you could just see the look in the players' eyes, and this was before halftime, of just, here we go again. And Coronado had success before, but it was just this, let's just get the game over with. And I was blown away. I drove home, driving over the bridge, and just, I was speechless, even though I was alone, just, talking to myself. I didn't even know what to think. Got home, couldn't sleep that night at all, watching the film, and it wasn't the film that bothered me, it was a look in players' eyes. So I had a coaches meeting. We meet as a coaching staff before on Saturday morning for about 45 minutes to an hour, have a players meeting, we film and lifting. But I had emailed my coaching staff and said, hey, be there a little bit earlier. Told my AD what I was going to do. So that morning, I went to after our coaches meeting, went into the classroom where the players were, and I walked in there, straight face, and I said, guys, I didn't leave friggin' Bedford, come out to California for last night. I didn't come from powerhouse program to come to a program where people don't care to play football. That's not what I'm here for. I'm done. I let the administration know last night, but I'm done. And I walked out. It was silent. Turned the corner, my AD's out there in the hallway. She wanted to kind of hear things. And she's looking at me like, now she knew where I was going with this, but she still had her jaw dropped. And I walked back in. And I'm like, and another thing. And they're all kind of, just startled for a second. I'm like, imagine if I was serious. And they're kind of looking around like, wait, what's going on here? He just walked out, and is he here or not? And I said, guys, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. I didn't leave Bedford, New Hampshire to come to California because this is a better program. I didn't leave to get more wins. I left a great established program. My why was because I had a grandson. That's it. And I didn't want to be the man, as one educator said to me in their words, to 144 players back in New Hampshire, but be a stranger to my grandson. My why is family. For me, personally, it's faith, family, and football, and that can be done anywhere. I said, guys, you got to find your why. You got to find out why you're playing this game, because we can go 0-9 and still have a great year. We can go 0-9 and still build character. We can go 0-9 and still make great memories, great friendships, and still grow. But we're not going to do what we did last night. We're not going to have that, hey, we're getting beat up and we're not going to keep fighting mentality. And it was really a paradigm shift for a good number of players. Not all of them. Some of them had coached, or played rather, for too many years of just not really caring, and that's part of changing a culture. But I shared with them what my why was and let them know that win or lose, I'm not going anywhere. Okay, I'm here. And reminded them that our playing days for all of us are limited. You can coach no matter how able-bodied you are, or from a wheelchair, God forbid, but you don't have to be physically fit and strong and fast and big to coach. But playing days are limited, and man, embrace the gift it is and find your why. So that following year, we as simple as it is, got a little helmet sticker. Put that word why in the back of our helmets to remind the players every time they've got to find their why. Now, I think it's a dangerous thing sometimes as coaches. We think that, inner city kids, that they got to play to get out of there. And schools like Coronado, a very affluent community here in San Diego, well, they're just playing for different reasons. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors. You might have a multi-million-dollar home with more cars than they have drivers, and there's more fighting and contention than you may ever see in a house where both mom and dad are working two jobs just to put food on the table. So we have to understand as coaches that it's a powerful thing, not only when we share our why, but when we empower, help our players to find their why and then build upon that. Okay, another conversation once again with the same gentleman I had this morning, conversation with, he meets with his players pre-season all the time and says to the incoming freshman, what's your goal? Do you want to go to college? Do you want to go to JUCO? Do you want to go to four-year college? Do you want to just continue to work for your family or whatever it is? But if this is your goal, how are we going to help you get there? To find out your players' why is a powerful thing and something that will help them well beyond the game of football. So what does it look like when you have a strong why? Think about that for a second. What does it look like when you have a strong why? I think it looks different for all of us. I really do. I think it depends. The picture at the top there are the two players. Man, I try to remind our coaches, myself, and the players all the time, remember what it was like to play football in the backyard or at recess or the first time you started playing? Remember what that felt like? Keep playing for that guy. Keep playing for that kid. Because we can't lose the joy of it. One of the greatest things I love seeing when I watch football at the highest level, I'm talking about college or the NFL, is when you see, and they're still young men, except for Brady, but he's still the GOAT. That pains me to say that because I'm a Cowboys fan, but I love when you see grown men or young men, 21, 22, 24-year-old young men, smiling and laughing and being, just that, sharing that passion, because it's a game. I'll never say it's just a game. I've experienced too much. I've spoken at funerals. I played against my own son to say it's just a game. But it is a game. And it's the greatest game there is, in my opinion, because it allows us as coaches a platform, a captive audience to help mold young men they've done correctly. The picture on the ring there, I've been blessed to be on football programs as a player and as a coach and as a head coach that have won division championships, state championships, league championships, conference championships. That's awesome. Okay? But there's a danger in chasing that ring and losing this ring here. And it might sound corny to some people, might sound cheesy, but if we really want to empower young men and be an example and mold them, and then we're bragging about, oh yeah, I don't see my family during the football season, you're sending a very clear message to those young men, and you're sending an even stronger message to your family that football takes precedence over your relationships. And you might find yourself in a room one day with a bunch of trophies and a bunch of rings and losing your wedding ring. So just, that's the end of that speech there, but be careful. Success has a lot of different looks. Just find out what your vision of success is. So what really is our job as coaches? Win games, help players become better men, help them get to college, change lives. Yes, yes, and yes, right? Okay. We all have our doubters, our haters, our critics out there. I know for a fact that there are certain people that see me post a video and only watch it because for whatever reason they just can't stand me and they want to critique it or talk to their buddy about it. I'm okay with that. Okay. There's that saying out there, it's not mine, but if you want to please everyone, sell ice cream. Well, I think that used to be true years ago. Now you're gonna piss off someone that's lactose intolerant. You know, you're going to upset someone somewhere along the line. But our job as coaches is multi-level, multifaceted. We have to win games. The reality of it is, whether you are an elementary school football coach on up to any level, somewhere along the line, if you're not winning enough games, is going to cause enough noise to get you out of there. And they kind of should. Okay, there's nothing wrong with being successful, but we can't let that be the determining factor of how we view our jobs. Okay, if we're winning championships and not changing lives, we're doing it wrong. We're doing it backwards. The thing I want to wrap up with here, and I want to make sure I don't forget to say this, chiefpigskin.com, what they're doing to share coaches' knowledge and passion out there. There's a lot of great videos out there by chiefpigskin.com that will talk about the X's and O's, and that's so important. We have to be competent. We have to know what we're doing. But I'm a firm believer that there are so many coaches that know this game better than I do, and there's thousands. And I'm not trying to sound modest or humble. There are thousands of coaches out there that know this game better than I do. But to go full circle and say there's not a better coach out there than I am, because my definition of success is not just the game of football, just how I can pick apart a defense or an offense or some other program. It's how I pour into someone's life. And if I truly want the young men and women in my program to leave here and be better human beings, when they face cancer, when they face death, when they face divorce, when they face life, when it punches them in the face, and it's going to happen to all of us, it happens all the time, I want them to remember back not just to what they fought through on the football field, because that's a game, but to know that they have someone they can reach out to know that they have someone that poured into them, and to remember something they learned that'll help carry them through that. So the last thing I want to share with you is, if the only thing we do is help our players to become better football players, we're failing them miserably. Let's win championships. Let's chase rings, but not do it at the cost of not building relationships and ultimately helping our young men, our young women to secure the best future for themselves. That's what I got here. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen, and once again, stay strong.